You're listening to the Sci-Fi Diner Podcast, serving the latest news in sci-fi multimedia. And now, your hosts, Scott, Miles, and Em. Your table is ready.
Live long and prosper.
This is the captain. We have a little problem with our entry sequence, so we may experience some slight turbulence and then explode.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Walter, put the cow away, would you?
What is this place? It's a freak show.
Ladies and gentlemen, before J.J. Abrams took it upon himself to bravely cast new and younger actors to play our heroes from Star Trek the Original Series, a collective of actors, writers have been trekking across the stars with Star Trek Phase 2. Their straight-to-internet show has been feeding for hungry Star Trek fans wanting more live-action original series era Trek. One of the first Star Trek fan companies to give us more live-action Star Trek, they are a pioneer of the fan film community, and yet they also lead the way to give us something just as good and enjoyable as anything Hollywood would put out. Tonight, we are happy to have on James Cawley, the founder and executive producer, and who also played Captain Kirk for Star Trek Phase 2, as well as some of his team. We also have on first assistant director, Dennis Hodson, and second assistant director, Jamie Sanchez. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you for taking time to talk with us on the Sci-Fi Diner podcast.
And we do have Dennis. Is Dennis on there? Dennis. Oh, you do have that. But, so we do have all three on. Very good. Yeah, well, welcome to the Sci-Fi Diner.
Yeah, happy to talk to you guys.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
James,
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. James, let's start with you. James, can you tell us a little about the history of Star Trek Phase 2 and what first inspired you to make your own Star Trek productions?
Well, this is probably the most asked question that I've answered over the last 11 or 12 years. I started watching the original series as a child and playing Captain Kirk with friends in the backyard. And so this is just an extension of that. It just has better toys. So, I've always been fascinated with it. I've always been fascinated with movie making, and it was just a way to, try to occupy my free time. I tour the country as Elvis. That's my day job, and I do have a lot of downtime from the gigs, and so I wanted to be able to focus my downtime on something that I would really enjoy, and I just zeroed in on wanting to play Star Trek, so I'm still playing Star Trek.
Isn't it awesome that you're able to play with toys and play like Captain Kirk as an adult? That's awesome.
Well, it was. It's a double-edged sword. Being in front of the camera is very, very tricky. A lot of people have opinions, strong opinions about that character, and some people are very, very caustic. And I just got to a point where some of it was just too extreme and directed at me very personally, so I just walked away from that part of it, and I've never been happier.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that, definitely.
James, your connection to Star Trek is not only with Phase 2, but you have another connection. Can you please tell us what that was?
Well, I was friends with William Mortice. I struck up a friendship with him when I first got out of high school in 1985. Corresponded with him quite a bit over the phone. Ended up flying to Los Angeles. I did some spec work for him. I did a bunch of freelance stuff for him and worked on the first season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Had a great time, great relationship with the man. He unfortunately passed away, and when he did, he left me a lot of things, left me a lot of stuff from the original series that he had collected. I ended up with his copies of all his personal blueprints, as a department head that he received, and several of his original sketches, and things like that. So he basically, gave me the tools to launch Phase 2 without ever knowing that he'd given me any kind of tools to launch Phase 2. So he was a mad genius. He was a workaholic. He was an amazing guy. He could take a placemat and make a costume out of it. I don't really have the words to tell you how great he was. Very, very big part of Star Trek's success, in my opinion, and one of the unsung heroes of the show.
Awesome. Now you are you've entertained, for many Star Trek fans, you've entertained them through Phase 2 films, but you're in the entertainment business yourself, and I think you kind of hinted at this just a little bit earlier. Can you tell us what you do in the entertainment business beyond this sort of stuff?
Well, I tour in a live show called The King in Concert. I play Elvis, with a live band. I've toured with Elvis's backup singers and some of his bandmates. I've worked with legends in concert. I've worked with Hollywood superstars. All these, these major shows that have celebrity impersonators. I kind of stumbled into that about 26, 27 years ago. I met up with a group of people who kind of pushed me in that direction and encouraged me. And Elvis has been very good to me. I mean, he's kept me from having to suffer through a 9-to-5 job for a long time, and I'm eternally grateful for it.
Oh, awesome.
It's been a lot of fun.
Well, there's nothing like doing what you enjoy doing and having that being called a job.
That's absolutely fantastic.
I really do. I really do enjoy being on stage in front of a live audience. There's a connection that you have with people when you're on stage. There's an energy that you cannot get if you're behind a camera, and you feed off from that. And the public, if they like what you're doing, they really pick you up. And Elvis fans are a lot like Star Trek fans in many ways. They're very, very rabid, and they're very protective. Of their interests, and the big difference is they're not as critical, and they are not as vocal about certain things. But in a lot of ways, they are similar. But two different animals on opposite ends of the spectrum in some ways, the live and then the filming. So
before we go away from this Elvis, can we see video of you as Elvis on YouTube?
Oh, I know there's pieces of stuff that I've done over the years out there, but there's nothing of the major shows that I do with the orchestras and the full bands and all of that stuff because they are really protective of it. They want you to pay and come see the show. So the stuff that has been videoed is only for corporate people to sell the show. So unless you've come to an amusement park and somebody has seen my smaller show and taped something themselves, you really can't see anything.
Okay.
And I'm really grateful for that.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I don't want people to see me that way, but it's just so much cooler when they plunk down their money and they come into the theater and they expect to see this 250-pound overweight guy poured in a jumpsuit, and they get the Elvis that they weren't expecting. So I've always taken pride in that.
Awesome.
I've seen some of those samples of it, James. I think you do great. As if your Elvis show is great, and hopefully, I could see one someday.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I would. I spent my 32nd birthday at Graceland. I love Elvis. I'm crazy for Elvis. I have his. My mom's not American, and the second album she bought when she came to America was an Elvis album, and I still have it.
Elvis is a pretty unique institution in this country, and a lot of people, still follow him, still have this undying love for him. He really is the epitome of the American dream. This very poor young man who was able to make it big, who never forgot where he came from, and always, no matter what his personal problems were, always treated people with respect and always gave more than he got. And that is why we still love Elvis.
Yeah.
He served his country too. He wasn't just some YouTube, schmuck who runs around with his trousers down by his bottom.
Justin Bieber. I mean, not only did he have talent, but he had integrity.
Yeah, he was a true American. He really was, and he's such an institution. Here we are all these years after his death, and the age range of people from my show is 8 to 85, and I just don't see the power of Elvis Presley ever going away. He makes more money now than when he was actually walking on the planet. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, and he deserves it. He had a lot of personal problems, let's face it, but who cares? He gave the world so much of himself with his music and his films, and that's the important thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's great that you are into the Elvis thing, because I'm seeing the dichotomy between Elvis and Star Trek. How it's something that they're such great fans, and it's funny that you've got your feet into the Elvis world and you've got your foot deep into the Star Trek world too, because of, as you're talking to us about Elvis, I can say you could say the same thing about Star Trek. So that's what's bouncing around in my head. And given that you've got your phase 2 isn't just the only thing you've done with Star Trek. What else is on your Star Trek resume?
Well, I did Next Generation, and then I had a little bit part in the J.J. Abrams film when that came out, which was a lot of fun. J.J. was terrific, and the cast of that movie was terrific. I just wasn't a big fan of the story and the fact that everything was rebooted and changed. I was pretty vocal about it at the time, but I tried to keep it professional. It's one thing. You can't blame people like J.J. Abrams for doing their job. He was hired to do a specific thing, which he did. He was hired to make Star Trek more accessible to the mainstream audience, and he did that. There's no argument about that. I'm just not a fan of it. To me, it's not Star Trek if you have to change it. I think Star Trek has done very, very well for the last 40-plus years. I don't think it needed to be changed. I think they needed to go back to, what was important about it. I think they really needed to tell stories about something important that involves people, specifically those characters that we love. And they've gotten so far away from that, it's ridiculous. And particularly with the newer films, it's been reduced to good guy versus bad guy, and how much can we blow up and make this look like a Transformers film? But that's what.
Oh, now you've done it. You mentioned Transformers to M.
Yeah. Well, you realize that
you hit a hot button with me, sir.
These movies are.
Yeah.
These movies are being made to be sold more overseas, to the overseas market, than they are to the American market. They make tons of money overseas. And the more they blow up, and the more spectacle it is, the less of a language barrier there is, so the more tickets they're going to sell. And I always say that they're going to sell tickets in America because they're made for the PlayStation generation. Kids today have a short attention span. They want things to blow up, and they want them to move, and that's just the way it is. I mean, the generation that we had growing up with Star Trek certainly is not the way things are today. I don't know too many kids that are interested in the original series, sadly.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I know that my brother and I introduced my nephews to Star Trek, starting with the original series, and they easily recognize some of the actors. They've seen William Shatner on Priceline. They go, "Oh my God, Captain Kirk!" And they do have. There's a lot of little kids out there. When I go to cons, I do see kids in the old school, in original series costumes, and they know who they are. It's there. It's a little bit. I agree. It's when they've done the reboot, it's a little less cerebral, a little less science, a little less adventure, a little more bang zoom, but not as bad as those, Transformer fan films that have been made recently. But going, like, when you find those younger fans, they're gonna. Oh, go ahead.
That's nice to hear, because I don't have a lot of contact with children, number one, but I think back to when I was a kid, Star Trek was on 3 and 4 times a day on 2 or 3 different channels. It would endlessly rerun, and today, what is it on MeTV? I really, other than that, I can't think of any time that it's on, and it's only on like once a week. So if you don't have Blu-rays or DVDs or whatever, it's really not in your face like it used to be. I do know that the marketing of it is pretty good. The action figures and the toys, that stuff seems to be doing well. But I don't know if it's because people my age are buying it, or because kids are buying it, or whether it's a combination of both. So
it's got to be a combination of both, and the fans are definitely out there. And once I point my nephews to your shows, they're going to see a lot of amazing, familiar faces from Star Trek past, aren't they?
That's true. That's true.
Like, who can our listeners see?
Well, they can see George Takei. He came back and reprised the role of Sulu. They can see Walter Koenig. He came back and played Chekhov for us. Barbara Luna came back. God help me, Fez. William Wyndham was
Enemy,
there. And,
In Harm's Way, and then again in Enemy Starfleet.
All right.
That's amazing.
And David Gerald is still with us. DC Fontana is writing a new script for us. So
you got some good people helping you.
The show was basically starting over from ground zero. We've recently moved into a new 13,000 square foot facility. We've been meticulously rebuilding everything the way it was back in the 1960s on the Desilu Paramount lot. I've taken extreme pains and pride in making sure that not one thing is out of place. I'm a stickler for that. I know that there are other shows trying to do what we do now, and God bless them. You know, they're doing their thing, and I'm happy for them. But when I look at some of their product, I see this is wrong and that's wrong. It drives me crazy. So I want to make sure that nobody can look at my show and say those things.
So you're a little bit OCD when it comes to sets.
Not a little bit, very much.
I can attest
and I'll tell
to
you
that.
why. And I'll tell you why, because I feel in my heart that the Enterprise is as much a character as Kirk and Spock and the rest of them. We've lived with that ship for 40-plus years now, and if something is wrong, your eye will immediately go to what's wrong, not what's right. So you have to walk this tightrope and make sure that you get everything as close as you possibly can.
Well, and you don't want people that are watching to be distracted by some minute detail that's out of place. And I mean, that's the art of this is to try and make the Enterprise seem like, I want to say invisible, but that's not. I don't mean that people don't see the Enterprise, but they aren't being distracted by the Enterprise.
Right. You want them to be comfortable with the surroundings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Now you
and believe me, if it's wrong, people will notice.
Oh, they'll let you know, and they'll let you know. They'll let you know. Yeah, Miles.
Vociferously, yes.
Yeah.
My next question is for Dennis and Jamie. What was it like for you the first time you saw the sets of the Enterprise? I mean, for me, that's my dream to see the original sets, even if it's a replica. I mean, knowing you guys, I'm sure it's, you know, you as James has said. I mean, he's going to painstaking detail to make them look original. But what was it like for you guys?
First, so I'll let you answer the question first.
2009, Katoomba. The very first day, I got to go onto the bridge, and James was there, and we were hanging space lights. I'm like, holy! I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise. And then James comes up from behind me and goes,
"Judicious
Fez, what
editing will come up in this podcast."
Yeah, it's like, Fez, I need you to make sure that nothing hits my chair. So I got to touch the chair on the very first day. Wow. That was kind of surreal.
That is surreal. That's awesome.
Danny?
Des, what was it like for you, sir?
Well, I came a few years after Jamie did in 2012. We were shooting to meet one of the producers, Andrew Grieve, and he brought me to the sets, and it was all dark. And so I went, it's just a set. And then James came in, and I met him, and he basically and said, "Can you paint?" And I said, "Well, we'll find out." And I guess that was good enough because he let me continue. But at the end of that day, he booted me out, and the writer, Rick Chambers, showed up. So he lit the whole set and got all the monitors going and got all the sound effects through the turbo. And then I had a similar experience that Jamie had, but you won't have to edit my language. It was just like being on the Enterprise. And James was really gracious about letting us all in the chair for a few minutes and look out over just incredible sets and sounds, and I will never ever forget that moment, and I'm forever grateful to James for doing that for us.
So Jamie, you're a second assistant director now, but you didn't start there. Please tell us how long you've been with Star Trek Phase 2 and how you got your start.
I started in 2009 on Katoomba as a grip, And every year since I've been back, I've had a new job. During the origin shoot, I was a production assistant. During the first filming of Mindsifter, I was script supervisor and first AD. Then Bread and Savagery, I was back to a production assistant. Holiest thing, I was assistant to the producers, and finally, second assistant director for the second filming of Mindsifter, among the many other things that I helped James with during shoots and stuff. And as a second assistant director, my job is to help schedule the shoot, which I helped Dennis with before the shoot and after we got there, and basically making sure that all the actors are comfortable and stuff.
Awesome.
I mean, you guys were on like a real movie set.
Yeah. All right, so I want to talk to you, Dennis. When I know you kind of mentioned this real briefly, but when did you start your work with Star Trek Phase 2? Maybe tell us a little bit about how you kind of got roped into working with these characters, and tell us a little bit about your role as first assistant director.
Well, first of all, I roped them into letting me come out. So
okay. So you bribed them.
There was no roping me in. They put out a call for volunteers, and I emailed James and produced like Rob Morrow and Andrew Grebe and basically pestered them until they thought, okay, this Canadian isn't going away. So they invited me out, to the first shoot, and I was a production assistant. And Mark Burchett, who was directing the episode, who we just lost last week, a great friend and mentor to all of us. I went up and asked him, can I be close to the action? And he graciously let me operate the slate, and I helped the first AD at the time, Glenn. So there was a following shoot in November of that year, and James asked me, said, do you want to be my first AD? And ever since then, I've been doing it, and hopefully I keep getting better at it as we go.
Awesome. And so you've been that's been kind of your role ever since. Awesome.
Yeah, I did. I was first AD in June 2013, and in this last episode, Mindsifter, that we just shot last June.
Oh, very cool. I know. I'm looking at question 8 here. I'm going to ask this question. I know, James, you kind of hinted at this already. You stepped down from Captain Kirk. You mentioned earlier that there's a lot of pressure in that role. Everyone has their own opinions. I mean, all you had to do was watch the newest incarnation of Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams Trek, to hear people's opinions on what they thought of Kirk, and the good, the bad, the ugly. People sharing their thoughts quite candidly, the positive, negative. You were in this role and obviously felt some of the same thing here. And you kind of mentioned earlier, this is some of the reasons that you kind of stepped away from just the pressure of that role. How does it feel to have someone else stepping into that role?
Well, it was the best decision that I ever made for me and for my show. I was first of all, I started the show because I wanted to play Captain Kirk. What I didn't expect was the venom and the absolute bitterness and hatred from certain circles, and it just got to the point where I kept questioning, why am I even doing this at this point? It really, it got really nasty in certain quarters, and it was strange. And there were some people that were like, "Oh, you're doing it too much like Shatner," and I thought, where are they getting that from? I mean, there's been 2 or 3 instances, with one line of dialogue over 11 years where a director said, "Now, in order for this line to work, James, you have to deliver it like Shatner," and I would do it. But for the most part, I just approached it as, this go-get-'em guy. I never, had the pregnant pauses to my speech or any of that kind of thing. And I felt that in order to help carry the part, that I ought to have his swagger when he walked. So beyond that, I tried to do my own thing. I never set out to imitate Shatner, because believe me, as an impersonator, if I want to imitate you, I probably could do it. But I walked away from it, and I got this terrific actor named Brian Gross, who looks like William Shatner, did quite a bit, in his 30s, and he's a trained actor, and he just is such a sweet human being off screen that it's just turned out to be this wonderful, wonderful win-win situation.
Did that free you? Did that move also kind of free you up to focus on maybe some other areas of Phase 2 that you maybe could still focus on, but maybe couldn't give quite the attention you were looking to give?
Absolutely. When you're not only producing a show, but you have to be in front of the camera, somewhere along the way something is going to suffer, either your performance or something else that you should be, focusing your attention on. And it's very, very difficult. And I have extreme admiration for anybody, particularly people like Leonard Nimoy, who can direct and produce and star in something at the same time. It is a very, very difficult thing to do. And I have found that now that I don't have to memorize lines, I can turn my eye onto other things and make sure that details that I need to be right are right. And I also get to spend much more time with people that are there, either participating in the shoot or visiting the set, and that's what's important to me. I've been able to keep this thing going, and I have all of these wonderful people that I get to see year after year after year, and there's new people that come into it year after year, and I have this wonderful extended family out there, if you will, and now I get to spend more time with them, and I'm in the trenches with them, and I'm not, separated from them at times because I have to focus on playing a character. So it's a win-win situation, and I think when the public finally gets to see Brian Gross this fall in a full episode, I think they're going to be pretty pleasantly surprised.
So this fall is when we get to see the next episode drop.
You do, and we were going to release an episode called The Holiest Thing this past February, and we spent a tremendous amount of time on that episode. And when it was delivered to me, I was not quite happy with the transfer that was done. We shot it in Cinema 4K, with the red Epic cameras, and then they did what they call a transcode, which allows them to kind of dumb it down to do the edit, because as you guys are aware, 4K, there's a lot of information. It's very hard to work with a file that big. So they dumbed it down to do the editing, and in so doing, there was some issues with it. It kind of muddied the image, if you get what I'm saying. We lost some of the color and the saturation and that kind of thing.
Fidelity.
So yeah, so I was kind of like, look, I could put this out this way, or I could be, the anal SOB that I am and insist that we get it right. So I asked for it to be kind of pulled back. We spent a lot of money, shooting it in 4K, and I wanted to make sure that when the public finally sees it, that they see the way we saw it being shot. So they're doing that now, and it's a great story, but it's a very personal kind of story, and I wanted the public to be able to see Brian Gross in his debut in a very powerful, emotional kind of situation. And so Mindsifter, to me, out of the choices that I have, is the episode for Brian to make his debut as Captain Kirk. It's a beloved story from fandom. He turned in a powerful, powerful performance. I'm not just saying that. It was an amazing thing to watch. I'm very excited about it, and I'm using Mindsifter as our anniversary, if you will. We celebrated our 10th anniversary last year, but we didn't have any kind of release to back it up. So this is going to be a very, very special story. It's actually going to take place earlier in the 5-year mission. We've gone to great lengths to match what you would have seen if it were really 1969 in the way it was shot. We brought in a professional DP who actually worked with Jerry Finnerman on Star Trek to light it and shoot it. I've got a couple of brilliant visual effects people that are actually working on it now to make it look the way I want it to look. We had an excellent set design crew. They rebuilt the Guardian of Forever from the City on the Edge, and it was an amazing thing to stand in front of that and film for 4 days. So we really had a terrific time.
That's awesome.
I'm very excited for this to come out in the fall.
Awesome.
So with what's coming, what new adventures will we see Kirk and his team in?
I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
Well, with the new season coming, what kind of adventures are we going to see Kirk and his team in?
Well, Mind Shifter, if you're not familiar with it, Kirk is kidnapped by the Klingons while he's on vacation. And they run him through this device called the Mind Sifter, which they talk about in the original episode, Errand of Mercy. And it basically rips his mind apart, and they embed these triggers in him so that if he starts to recover, his memory, if he hears his name, he automatically loses everything again. And the whole thing revolves around the secret of time travel, and the Klingons want it, and they know Starfleet has it, and so they take Kirk to the Guardian of Forever, and they try to get him to try to force Kirk to tell them how does this thing work, and it doesn't, and Kirk finally manages to stumble through it and get away from the Klingons. I mean, you don't know what happens to him. And I really don't want to tell you any more than that, but it's a great story. And then, of course, you're going to see the holiest thing where he actually meets Dr. Carol Marcus for the first time.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. We will
she
be
won't be in her
returning
underpants, will she?
No, we won't be doing that. It is very much the Carol Marcus that people are familiar with. It's very much the Carol Marcus that people are familiar with from The Wrath of Khan. So.
Good.
Well,
we also return to the Roman planet in an episode called Bread and Savagery. So you get to see what happened to the children of the sun and how the planet continues to evolve.
Oh, good.
So
Nice.
that's what's next up on our list.
Lots of good stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
Any cool new fun cameos, people blast from the past that you could hint at, maybe?
Well, not in the first three, but we're actually working on something that's very special coming up, and I'm not ready to kind of let it out of the closet yet, but it's going to be pretty spectacular. I will tell you that DC Fontana is writing it, and it will feature Dr. McCoy's daughter, so let your mind wander from there.
Awesome.
Wow. Excellent.
Oh, that's awesome.
Knowing what you do is a labor of love. Nobody's making any money on it. You're doing it because you love it. How can our listeners help and support Star Trek Phase 2?
Well, first of all, we encourage everybody to come and participate. If you're a Trekkie, we actually want you to get on a plane or get into a car or however you want to and get here to help us film. It's an experience that I think everybody that's a Star Trek fan should participate in. You actually get a feel for what it was like to be on that show or working on that show. And if you can't be here, we certainly would love any kind of financial contribution people would be willing to make to us. They can donate through PayPal. We have links on our Facebook and website. It's very expensive. We're looking at about $50,000 to $60,000 an episode. So, yeah, it's crazy. But we're still here and we're still having fun.
Wow. It's great. And it's great in the fact that you have these episodes planned out. It says at least in some way you have a decent amount of backing and a bunch of people that are already supporting you. And it's just, I know that it'd be great just to have more people jumping on board just to help kind of share the load and kind of continue to deliver this great content that you guys have been delivering from the really beginning, the era of fan films. Yeah.
If somebody had told me,
go ahead.
If somebody had told me 10 or 11 years ago that I would still be doing this, I would have said, no, you're crazy. It'll never go that long. And here we are all these years later and we're still doing it.
Right. Yeah. And a lot has changed in those 10 years, no doubt.
Yes, a lot of things have changed.
Well, so people want to go and find out more about, Star Trek Phase 2. They want to find out more about the upcoming releases. Where can they go to watch past episodes? Where can they go to find out more about Star Trek Phase 2 other than just supporting you?
Well, the most up-to-date information is on our Facebook page every day, which is Star Trek New Voyages Phase 2. Our website is out there, www.StarTrekPhase2, it's the number 2.com. And you can pretty much get on Facebook and interact with everybody. The cast and crew answers messages and posts and so forth. And basically we are like you. We're just a group of fans, and we're doing this to have a good time and live out our childhood fantasies. So,
yeah.
You're also helping keep Star Trek alive.
Well, we'd like to think we are. We hope we are.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to chat with us here in the Sci-Fi Diner podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Dennis, it's great to have you on, and as well as you, Jamie.
Well, thanks for having us, and yeah, it's a great time. And again, as James said, check out our Facebook page, or find us at StarTrekPhase2.com.
Thank you so much for visiting the Sci-Fi Diner. We hope you enjoyed the food, the service, and the conversations. If you'd like to share your thoughts regarding what we've talked about, or tell us what you're watching or reading, flip open your communicators and contact us at 1-888-508-4343, or click the SpeakPipe link at SciFiDinerPodcast.com, or send an MP3 or typed email to SciFiDinerPodcast@gmail.com. You can also join the conversation on our Facebook fan page at facebook.com/Sci-Fi Diner. We'll share your thoughts on our listener feedback show. If you'd like to support the diner beyond the conversation, you can always throw some coins in the tip jar at SciFiDinerPodcast.com.
That's amazing.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is pretty cool.
And you've got, oh my God, you've got Eugene Roddenberry. Shut up. Holy, yeah, I'm going to lose my crap for a minute. Let me just mute. I'll just, oh my God, I have to do the big gay gasp. Oh my God.